Well, folks are waiting. Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes as we wait for the colleagues to join us. You will be muted throughout the webinar. However, please ask your questions or make your comments in the question box, in your question chat box. There is someone asking about the audio from the last meeting. OCASI. Okay, another couple of minutes. Folks are joining slowly. Okay, it's 9:30. We'll give folks another minute or two as they're coming in slowly. Welcome, everyone. We will be starting in another minute. We'll give folks another minute or so. Okay, John, are you ready? Let's go. Good morning, everyone. There are over 100 of you who have joined, and we only have an hour, and I know that folks have lots of questions for John. I would like to welcome you to OCASI's third webinar for our frontline practitioners across Ontario. It is always good to hear from you. We wanted to provide this opportunity for you to have some of your questions answered about employment and workers' rights, about human rights in the context of COVID. We've heard from a number of folks wanting information about your clients, but also about your own work experience, especially as Ontario prepares to move Toronto, Peel, and Windsor, Essex, which are the three holdouts, to stage 3 in terms of our recovery process during this pandemic. We are asking you, everyone is muted because there are so many of you on the call, and so we're always glad to see the enthusiasm for activities like this. We are asking you to write your questions in your chat question box. I will read them out, and our wonderful friend and colleague, John No, who is joining us today from Parkdale Legal Clinic, will be very happy to answer all of your questions on employment, workers, and human rights. But before we get started, we have a poll for you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Debbie Douglas, and I'm the Executive Director of OCASI. I'm often told that I assume that everybody knows me as if I'm famous. So I often forget to introduce myself. It doesn't come from humility, actually, it probably comes from arrogance. So I'm owning it. John, that was for your sake, just to get you to laugh a bit. So we will be launching a poll just to hear from you. What are you thinking? What do you know? So we get a sense of who is on the call as well. Amy, will you launch the poll, please? The poll is open. Please answer your questions, and Amy will read out the results of the poll. We'll give you 2 minutes. For new folks coming in, we are doing a poll to start off our session today with John No from Parkdale Legal Clinic. This is Debbie Douglas, OCASI's Executive Director, who will be your host today. For those of you who have just arrived, you are muted. There are over 130 of you on the call as of this minute. So please get your questions ready, write it in your chat question box. I will read it out. But please first do the poll. Amy, has the poll been launched?
Yes, so we have 97. The question is, do you know that you can refer your clients to legal clinics? And 97% of you have answered yes, and only 3% have answered no, and 83% of you have voted. So thank you for that. I'm going to launch the next question.
Thank you. Second question has been launched. Take a minute, please. Another 30 seconds.
Okay, so I'm going to read the results again. So the question is, do you refer your clients to legal clinics? 88% of you have voted. The majority, 72% have answered yes. 16% have said rarely. 2% have said no, and 9% replied not applicable.
That's interesting. The non-applicable one. Poll number 3.
Go to the next question. Again, please pick as many options that apply. And we know that some of these may not apply to you. And I'm sorry, the platform didn't allow us to give you an option of not applicable or other. So it's just to take a pause. So please do the best you can.
1 minute. Amy?
So 79% of you have voted. Okay, some of you are still voting, but I'll read the results. Please keep voting. So 85% of you have voted. It seems that the majority refer clients to legal clinics for immigration and refugee-related matters. The next two highest choices, very close, are for domestic violence and for housing. 35% of you refer clients for employment reasons and 40% for social assistance. I'm sorry, I can't show the screen because Debbie, I need to get control back from you, but if you could do that, then I can show my screen, or we'll just go with the results I read out.
Being a techno peasant, I have no idea how to allow you. I thought I did allow you to do that. Do we have one more question?
Yes, so this is the last question I'm launching. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll shortly. So 84% of you have voted on the question, are you aware of your client's legal rights? So 65% of you have replied yes, 31% have replied vaguely, 3% have replied no, and 1% has replied not applicable. And that's it for this set of polls. Debbie, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. And so now it's my great pleasure to welcome our guest lawyer to our conversation on employment, workers, and human rights this morning in the settlement sector, both in terms of the questions our clients may have or you may have as workers in the sector.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to the town hall. So maybe I'll introduce my organization first, and then introduce what I do in that organization. So I'm from Parkdale Community Legal Services. It appears as though a lot of you are already aware of what the legal clinics are or do, but just as a background, every community in Ontario is covered by a community legal clinic. There's roughly 70 legal clinics across Ontario, from Windsor to Ottawa, from Toronto to Moosonee. Not every legal clinic does the practice in the same area of law. The legal clinics are run by a community board. So ultimately, it is the community that decides on what legal services to provide to their community. Now, the two areas of law that the legal clinics are not allowed to practice in is in criminal law and family law. However, if you do have issues with those, I would still encourage you to contact the legal aid clinic in case they have, because they probably do have referrals for criminal issues or family law issues. Now, with respect to the Parkdale Community Legal Services, which I am part of, we were formed in 1971. We are the first and the oldest legal clinic in Canada. It was actually started as an experiment by the federal government, and we've stayed on for the last 49 years. We practice in four main areas of law: social assistance and criminal injuries compensation board cases, immigration. We have an immigration division. We also have a housing division representing tenants, and we have the workers' rights division. I'm part of the workers' rights division. I'm a staff lawyer there. And in the workers' rights division, we assist people with issues such as employment standards. So let's say unpaid wages, for example, lack of overtime, vacation pay, public holiday pay, etc. Wrongful dismissals, so people who've been let go unfairly. Human rights in the workplace, discrimination in the workplace, whether it's based on race, sex, gender, disability, for example, and also employment insurance issues. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Now, I won't be able to give you any specific legal advice for a couple of things, for a couple of reasons, mainly being, law can be very complicated. I know a lot of people want to have a very black and white yes or no kind of answers. Oftentimes you probably hear me say it depends on the situation. So what I'll try, because there's no way for me to do a proper case assessment over a chat, I'll give you general information based on the questions you give me. So don't consider it as a specific legal advice, but just legal information purposes.
Thank you very much, John. You have your first question. Can a newly arrived permanent resident who left their former job to emigrate get served if they meet the income requirement?
Yes. The good thing is now there's a bunch of requirements to get served. And for people who don't know service, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. I think this person is referring to the requirement that you have to have earned $5,000 either in 2019 or $5,000 in the 12 months preceding you applying for CERB in order to qualify for it. Now that's $5,000 in earnings. That can be employment earnings or self-employment earnings or business earnings. The good thing is that the federal government has stated that $5,000 earnings does not have to be earned in Canada. So it could be earnings from another country.
Thank you, John. Folks, I'm encouraging you to write your questions in the chat question box. I will read them out. Someone is saying there's not enough legal clinics in Richmond Hill. We agree it is an ongoing issue that we have with legal aid and the regime here in Ontario, but actually across the country. And so, yes, there's a lot more work to be done. John, one of the questions that we hear all the time, I'll get back to my question. Here's a question from the audience. If the person gets laid off and gets severance from employer, does he have to pay EI and or CERB back?
Very likely. So both EI and CERB is supposed to be an income replacement for you not having any income, which including severance. So it happens fairly often where you get your severance late for whatever reason. You have to sue to get your severance, or you have to push to get severance. So people are sometimes on EI already, and then or CERB, and then 2 months later the employer finally pays off severance. In theory, you do have to pay EI back for the time you receive severance. So let's pretend, for example, you received 8 weeks worth of severance pay. You have to pay EI back for that 8 weeks worth. So if you got EI for 20 weeks, you're only going to pay back for the 8 weeks. And remember too, EI is only roughly about 55% of your previous earnings. So when you get 8 weeks of severance, that's at 100% of your pay. So in effect, you're giving 55% of that to the government, up to a maximum of about $540 for EI purposes, and then you're keeping about 45% of it. Good news is, for EI, that actually shifts your EI starting period, which means that you may actually end up getting the EI money back at the end, because let's say, for example, you start getting EI on January 1st, and then you get your severance pay that's for about 2 months worth or 8 weeks, which means that your EI start date actually is pushed back to March 1st. So you have to pay back your EI you receive from January 1st to March 1st, but because your EI now starts on March 1st, when it should have ended on September 1st, your new end date will be November 1st. So if you're still unemployed, you may actually get the EI right back at the end. If you're still unemployed. Now for CERB, it doesn't quite work that way. If the federal government later determines that you did actually have income during the time you received CERB, they may ask you to pay it back, yes.
Thank you. Next question. When calculating the income requirements to be eligible for CERB, do we consider the total income before direct deductions or after deductions?
My understanding is gross. It's gross income.
Thank you. So it's before deductions?
Yes.
Yes. Can a student who graduated last May of this year, who worked last year and earned more than $5,000 get CERB, or should they get the student assistance?
If you qualify for CERB, I would encourage that student to apply for CERB rather than CESP. So if you have a situation where an individual can apply for both because they qualify for both, apply for CERB, because CERB gives you $2,000 versus CESP, which gives you only $1,250.
Noah, someone wants to know if, in spite of COVID, if you are meeting clients in person or not. Is your legal clinic open?
We are. All the legal clinics in Ontario are open. Different legal clinics are approaching COVID-19 differently, but vast majority of them are meeting clients remotely. So they're probably doing telephone intakes, if needed, if the client is capable or has capacity to do so, maybe Zoom intakes as well. At our clinic, for example, we're slowly starting to meet with clients when needed. So for example, if the client has language barriers, if the client doesn't have email or doesn't have access to Zoom, then we'll meet them in person while practicing safe distancing, making sure they wear masks, making sure to disinfect, etc. But mostly we are open, but most of the client interaction is done by telephone.
Thank you. Folks, put your questions on. OCASI staff, I'm having issues with the questions. Do you work with international students? Do legal clinics work with international students?
That's a very good question. Yes, we do work with international students. I want to expand to say that we work with anyone regardless of their immigration status. So even if they're undocumented or they don't have, they have precarious immigration status, whether they have a SIM card or not, we will work with everybody. So yes, as long as they have a legal issue that we can assist with, and they meet our income eligibility, because we only serve low-income individuals, we will assist international students and others.
Similar questions. This person says, I believe it's renewed. I work with LGBTQ plus newcomers who are also non-status. Can they be referred to a legal clinic?
Yes, for sure. There is also, you may know, there's a specialty clinic called HALCO, which also works with people with HIV positive. I mean, so I guess you don't, I mean, not just exclusively LGBTQ community, but there is a specialty clinic that does work with people who have HIV related legal issues. And all the legal clinics are very, I mean, we hope so, and I'm glad to say that we believe in inclusion. We believe obviously in LGBTQ rights. And again, same with immigration status. If you have a legal issue, even if you have if you don't have status or you're undocumented, we will assist that individual.
Thank you. A question from Toronto from Almaz. What's your catchment area for Parkdale Legal Clinic?
So the Parkdale Legal Clinic is, our catchment area is roughly, if you know Toronto well, Humber River, so the Etobicoke-Toronto border, to about Shaw Street, and then from Lake Ontario to about Bloor Street. But all the every Toronto neighborhood is covered by a legal clinic. Now, if you're not sure which is your neighborhood legal clinic, you could really call any of them. They'll make sure to refer you to the correct one. There was a comment about the Richmond Hill. Some communities, some legal clinics have to serve a huge geographic area. I know, for example, the Richmond Hill is served by the York Region Clinic. They don't just do Richmond Hill, they do Richmond Hill, Markham, Newmarket, Keswick. I mean, I don't envy them for the number of communities they serve. And yes, I definitely do agree that some communities need more legal clinics. Yeah.
Thank you. This person writes, my client entered Canada on February 20th as a landed immigrant and did not find employment. When I called for her to serve hotline, they said she's eligible, but when she applied, she has been denied because she is missing 2019 tax return. Is there any other way she can apply for serve?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm surprised to hear that, because she should, well, the fact that she's missing a 2019 tax return shouldn't be the barrier for her getting served. When I hear that question, one flag I do have is you do have to have lost your job due to COVID-19 related reasons. So this person, even if they earned $5,000 in their the place where they came from, may not qualify for CERB because they didn't technically, I'm assuming, lose your job due to COVID-19. So I'm flagging that as the possible reason for denial, but it shouldn't be the 2019 tax return. So what I'll encourage you is to refer that person to their local legal clinic and see if the legal clinic can advocate on behalf of that person, assuming that they meet the other criteria for getting served, and try to get this person served.
Another question, a permanent resident went back home for a month, but could not come back due to the cancellation of her flight. He just came back, he's just back now in 14 days of isolation. Can they apply for CERB?
Definitely, assuming that they meet the other eligibility. So if they were working and then they went to visit another country, they came back and they're in quarantine and therefore they can't work, yes, they can get served for the time they're in quarantine.
Very good, thank you. I'm trying to find another question, but in the meantime, a person who entered Canada this year on a work permit couldn't find employment because of COVID. At this point, they are without any income. What funds can they access?
He or she or they are in a very tough situation. Technically, they don't qualify for CERB because they didn't hold a job. You have to have lost your job due to COVID-19 related reasons. So I've encountered people in this situation, and it's really tragic, really, because that person. You're right. That person, one of the reasons they can't find work is probably due to COVID-19 related reasons. What we've been letting people know is, look, as lawyers or as legal clinicians, obviously we can't tell people to do something that we know isn't technically correct. But we do let people know, look, you're gonna have to here are the consequences to applying for something that you probably don't qualify for, which is even if you get it, you may have to pay the money back. There could be some penalties associated with it. But we also understand that, I don't know, you literally need to put food on the table. So you have to make the choice, but these are the consequences for it. We're not going to necessarily tell you what to do. Now, I hope this person's on a work permit, so they're probably not a permanent resident. So
Yeah.
they wouldn't get social assistance.
That's right.
This person's in a really tough situation, income-wise. Yeah. So they're between a hard and a rock place. I think what we would probably tell them is, look, these are the legal consequences. If you're willing to take that risk, take it. We're not telling you to take it because we can't tell you to do it. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, refer them to a legal clinic as well. Now, my understanding is some municipalities is offering some emergency benefits through Ontario Works, but it's discretionary. So it's not a guarantee that the person will get, and it's not going to be steady income either. So I struggle with this question.
And our sense is that the municipalities, with the $200 million grant from the province, are supporting food, shelters, as opposed to cash, which is one of the advocacy points for us, both with the province and the federal government. We were hoping as well that the $350 million announced by the federal government for the nonprofit sector, we would have been able to carve out a bit of money exactly because of situations like this. Folks who are here in Canada, on work permits, undocumented, have no access to any of the other income supports that's been announced. And so organizations should be able to give them a prepaid credit card, for example, with cash on it. Unfortunately, the government has been pushing back on that. We're continuing to advocate on it, but you're absolutely right. They're between a rock and a hard place. I wish we had a better answer. But as you said, you can't tell folks what to do, but we absolutely understand when people need to pay for shelter and food. Another one about a student, John. If a student was laid off on their placement due to COVID, can they apply for CERB?
So I'm assuming this is paid placement. If it's a paid placement, yes, they should be able to apply for CERB. If it was an unpaid placement through the school co-op program or etc., they could apply not for CERB, but probably for CSP. Now, if this is someone who's going into post-secondary by February 2021, or is in post-secondary, or had just recently graduated from post-secondary. So if you're talking about a grade 10 student who's on placement, lost their co-op placements, they wouldn't be able to. But if it's a post-secondary student, they should be able to, they should be able to apply for CSP if it was unpaid placement. If it's paid placement, they should be able to apply for CRB, assuming they meet all the other criteria.
Thank you. Yes, it was a work placement as opposed to a school placement. Thanks for that. If schools are not back full-time due to COVID-19, can an employee ask to work from home and arrange with the spouse who works in essential field to take care of the young children? So can an employee ask to work from home so that they are able to take care of their young children?
The sure, yes, and yes, with a bit of a caveat. The human rights, both the Human Rights Code and the Employment Standards Act allows people to, well, actually, the Employment Standards Act allows people to take time off work if they have to stay home due to because they have to take care of a child who needs to stay home because of a school closure or daycare closure, but that's unfortunately unpaid leave. This person is wanting to work just from home. Now, now he or she will probably be covered by the Human Rights Code. The Human Rights Code protects people's what they call family status, their parent-child care obligations. So the rule is, if you have what they call substantial parental childcare obligations, the employer has a duty to accommodate you. So the first question is it a substantial childcare obligations? So for example, I'm using extreme examples, of course. If you wanted to stay home with a, I don't know, 14-year-old child because you thought it would be a nice bonding moment, because it's a 14-year-old, that's not a substantial childcare obligation because the 14-year-old could take care of themselves, and bonding isn't a childcare obligation. So the employer doesn't have to accommodate your request to work from home. However, if you have a 3-year-old or 4-year-old at home and there's no daycare, there's no one else who could take care of the kid, but you can't leave the kid alone. In that case, the employer would have the responsibility or the duty to accommodate your request. And if they can allow you to work from home, they should allow you to work from home.
We have a question around low income eligibility. How is low income eligibility defined? Is it LICO?
For legal aid clinics, it's not based on LICO. It is based on whether there's one adult in the household or 2 adults in the household, and how many other dependents are there. It is very, very low. I'm ashamed to say it's such a low amount. It's embarrassingly low. Unfortunately, it's not something that we set up. For a single person, for example, it's roughly around, I think for a single person, it's around $25,000 a year, I think.
Wow, that's very low.
It's very low. Having said that, there are some discretions that the clinics can use. For example, if this is to maintain someone's income, right? Even if let's say they used to make $40,000 a year, but they were let go, the clinic can exercise the discretion and still represent that person. If the case is a very an important case, it involves a sexual harassment case with a problematic employer, or someone on social assistance is automatically eligible. So if the person is low income, I would still encourage you to send that person to the legal aid clinic, because it is very possible that the legal aid clinic, even if the person is a bit above, could take the case on. So I know in our division, in the workers' rights division, if you make minimum wage, you're pretty much over our income level, which means that we probably couldn't represent anybody. So we look for different grounds that we can exercise our discretion.
Very good. That's why we like Parkdale. Can a senior who has been sponsored by a group of 5, now the group members are unemployed, can that senior apply for CERB?
Again, there's different requirements. One is you have to have lost your employment or your business or self-employment income. So if the senior isn't working but was merely relying on the sponsor's income or support, then they wouldn't qualify for CERB. Now, I'm not an expert on the sponsorship, so I don't know what the legal obligations of the sponsor to support this person would be. So that may be more of an immigration question. But at least with a very narrow question of can they qualify for CERB, probably not. There may be other benefits that they may qualify for, whether it's Ontario Works or ODSP, or whether through the sponsors. But that may be a question that that a legal clinic may actually have to look at it specifically.
Yeah, thank you. And we have a clarification from someone, I believe it's Dolores. For clarification, a newcomer can apply to serve if they earn below 5,000 in their home country, is what she's saying.
If they earn 5,000 in their home country, yes. It doesn't have to be in Canada, yeah.
If you apply for CERB on August 3rd, is it for the previous month of July or for the coming month of August? Is it backwards looking?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what? I can't remember.
Neither can I.
There is one good thing the federal government did there. They actually created a very good FAQ page. So you just Google CERB questions or CERB FAQ. I do find usually, I don't think it's too controversial to say, I find Service Canada websites so confusing often. But with CERB, they did a fairly good job. So unfortunately, I can't remember that exact detail. So I would encourage you to go to the Service Canada or CRA webpage on that question.
Here's a morale booster for you, John. This person says Parkdale is the best. So can we refer? So can we refer to your clinic? Do you tell clients to go to their own clinic? This person lives in a community with a clinic.
Yeah. So we have 4 divisions. For housing division, immigration division, social assistance division, they're so swamped just with the Parkdale clients, and also because most clinics, I would say all clinics, does social assistance and housing. So we wouldn't take on cases outside of our catchment area. Now for employment, the legal clinics, the employment services in the legal clinic system is a bit spotty. Not all legal clinics do them. When I first started in the legal clinic system, maybe only about 6 out of 70 legal clinics did employment law services. Now there's a lot more. But because it's a little bit more spotty, our division, the Workers' Rights Division, our geographic catchment is a little bit more flexible. For example, Jane and Finch Legal Clinic does not do employment law services. So Jane and Finch Legal Clinic refers their community members with employment law issues to our clinic. So we have a very informal kind of relationship referral system with the Jane and Finch Legal Clinic. So what I'll encourage you to do is do contact your home legal clinic first, see if they can assist you. Or if you don't know your home legal clinic, you can contact us. We'll direct you to the right clinic. Does it hurt to contact us? No, but I will say this. Thank you for the morale booster, but all the legal clinics in Ontario are staffed by really good, capable people. And the other thing is, you want to establish a relationship with your home legal clinic as well. So take this opportunity to establish that relationship. Hopefully, you'll be able to kind of create a long-lasting relationship where you could work on different projects together. Hopefully, maybe it will lead to different projects together, etc. So yes, contact your home clinic first. But if they can't help you, ask them if they have referrals, and maybe they'll refer you to another legal clinic like Parkdale.
And there was a similar question from Northern Ontario as well. Can clients from small northern communities with less resources be referred to clinics in Toronto?
It's tough because the thing is, I mean, the distance also really makes it tough too. Now I know the clinics in they're based on, they have satellite offices. The clinic based out of Thunder Bay, for example, they have satellite offices in Marathon, Musini, etc. And I know the folks there, they're really, really good. I think I guess what I'll say this. The clinics do work together as well. So and different clinics have different expertise. So when there's an issue that I need assistance with, and I know there's someone in Ottawa or Thunder Bay or Sudbury who has expertise on that, I give them a call all the time. I send them an email. I ask for case conferencing. Sometimes we even partner up with people if they have expertise on it and we want their mentorships. You will be in good. I'm thankful for obviously the voter confidence, but I wouldn't actually necessarily say Toronto clinics are more well resourced. Thankfully, LAO does recognize that all community needs assistance as well. So I wouldn't hesitate to contact your home legal clinic.
Thank you. Back to serve. For people who are found later not to be eligible to receive serve after receiving it, how will they be asked to return the amount of serve and when?
That's a big mystery. I mean, if this was an EI issue, EI has been around for decades. There's a lot of case law on it. There's a lot of experiences. I'll be able to tell you more or less, I'll be able to predict fairly well, this is what's going to happen to you if you receive EI you should not have received. With CERB, we don't know. We have no idea. I mean, I'm not even sure if the government knows, because the government, they knew that we're in unprecedented times. They wanted to get money flowing right away. They started flowing this money without really having thoughts about, what the overpayment recovery would look like. I know initially what was frustrating was initially government stated, look, we're not going to punish people because they happen to apply when they shouldn't have applied. We're more interested in making sure that people have money to feed their kids and pay the rent. But the business lobby / the conservatives, right-wing folks started creating this narrative that there's people who's undeserving who's applying for it, and they started putting pressure on the government to, I don't know, reel it in, pushing this false narrative that there's people, this widespread fraud. So the Liberal government then started speaking about, creating penalties and fines and etc. Luckily, that bill did not pass because there was enough uproar from people from members of OCASI, from the community. So we have to be vigilant about, the government deciding not to look tough and decide to punish the person. But in terms of how that would look like, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how they'll figure out, whether someone was ineligible or not, and what kind of penalty they'll issue, if any. What I will say is the legal clinics are definitely attuned to that possibility, and the legal clinics are prepared to assist people who are being pursued unfairly because of alleged overpayment. And even if there was a valid overpayment, we could work with people to negotiate a proper payment plan or try to get a waive if the person is low income, etc. So it's a mystery, but we are ready to assist people with that when it comes to it.
Thanks. There's a comment here before I go to the next question that one of our colleagues is saying that they think most of the individuals and families who've been sponsored privately, whether by a group of 5 or a church or families, are falling through the cracks during this COVID period. My colleague at OCASI, Michelle Ball, is working actually on private sponsorship in the relationship to the immigrant and refugee serving sector. So please feel free. I don't know who the asker is, but please feel free to reach out to us at OCASI. Next question. I have some LGBTQ plus newcomers who are in their refugee claim appeal processes. They are not happy with their legal representatives due to many reasons, from neglect, not being able to communicate, mistakes made, and so on. What are the conditions that I can refer them to a legal clinic? They say they know that changing lawyers is a bit complicated in these situations.
Yeah, so it sounds like from the question they have a private bar lawyer, I get through the legal aid certificate, and then now they want to switch. I mean, everyone is entitled to the legal counsel of their choice. I mean, there's practical limitations to that, right? As in, like, ability to pay for one and etc. There are legal clinics that assist people with refugee claims or immigration claims. I think this the LGBTQ. I don't know which. Not every legal clinics does immigration law.
Yeah.
I would encourage this person to contact their legal aid clinic, bring their entire file with them, and that legal aid clinic staff member or lawyer or the clinic itself will be able to tell them, look, you have a hearing a week from now. It's just not feasible for you to just change lawyers at this time. Or they may actually be able to look at this person as, look, I do see that this lawyer isn't responding to you in a timely manner, but at least as far as the quality of the work is concerned, it seems to be okay to me. I don't know. They could either provide you that person with the reassurance, or they could say, yeah, there is definitely a problem here. I do remember about 5 or 6 years ago, we were getting a lot of Roma clients coming in.
That's
and
right.
there was a problem. There was a problem. This person actually got this. One of the lawyers actually got this
Disbarred.
lawyer. Huge problem with this lawyer. Really, pretty much scamming Roma community. We've identified that. We filed complaints to the different authoritative bodies about this person. And when we could, we did actually try to fix the problem for the clients as well. Sometimes it was after the fact, unfortunately, once the decision already came out, and it was about appeals. And I think we were successful in getting some of these people have their decision reversed. So it is possible, the legal clinic may confirm that there is a problem. So the person is definitely correct to say it's not easy to switch lawyers, but it is possible.
Thank you. Next question. If you have been tested positive for COVID-19, can your employer terminate your job?
No. They can't. They can tell you that you can't come into work, that you have to take a medical leave of absence for until you're better, or until your symptoms disappear, or until the 14 days passes, etc., etc. And unfortunately, it can be unpaid leave, but they can't fire you for it, which means that once you recover, they have to give your job back. So if the person was fired because they have COVID-19, that is both wrongful dismissal and very likely a violation of the Human Rights Code, because COVID-19 is likely to be defined as a disability by the Human Rights Tribunal. So for this person definitely would, at least based on the facts that was given, would have some legal remedies or legal recourses available to them. So this person should definitely seek legal advice.
Okay. There are a couple of questions coming up on the same theme. Can I apply for the CERB if I don't feel safe at work? And answer this one as well while you think about that. If a worker feels their workplace is not safe or not provided the necessary tools to work with, can they refuse to work?
So there's a law called the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Now, under the OHSA, you have the right to refuse unsafe work. When you do refuse unsafe work, you have to let your supervisor or employer know why you're refusing to work. And when you do that, that triggers a responsibility or duty on the employer to investigate your complaint. If you're unsatisfied, and either the employer will say, okay, you're right, it is unsafe, so I'm going to fix the situation, and I fix the situation, or say, I think it's safe, you need to go back to work. If you still are in disagreement with your employer about the safety of your workplace, then you can, or the employer can, request not a complaint, but file a request to the Ministry of Labor to send their health and safety inspector. And the Ministry of Labor's health and safety inspector will actually investigate the workplace to see if it's safe or not. So that's the correct way of refusing unsafe work in a way that protects you. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to show up to work without telling the employer, for example. Now, the thing is, when it comes to COVID-19, it can't be a general fear of COVID-19. So it can't be, well, I'm afraid of COVID-19 generally, so I don't want him to go into work. it has to be something about the workplace itself that is unsafe. So for example, your employer is not instituting social distancing rules. Your workplace is not well ventilated. There's no hand sanitizers. There's no barriers between you and the customers, etc. It has to be something to that workplace, not your general fare. Now, if you are immunocompromised, for example, if there's something special about your circumstances, you suffer from diabetes, you suffer from some, you're HIV positive, or etc. That prevents you specifically from going into the workplace, then as long as you can provide that medical proof to the employer either has to accommodate you by allowing you to work from home or providing you with an accommodation process so you can work safely. Or if they can't accommodate you in that way because it's impossible to have you work from home, for example, you're a factory worker and you just can't work from home, then at least allow you to take a leave of absence, a medical leave of absence. And so that would allow you to get CERB or EI sickness benefits, etc. I will add, if you are seeking medical leave of absence, while you may have to provide your employer with some kind of medical proof, the employer has no right to know the diagnosis of your medical condition. So for example, the employer may have the right to ask for a doctor's note that says you can't work in the workplace because the workplace is not ventilated well enough, and that's gonna affect your immune system. But they have no right to know that you are suffering from HIV, for example. So the employer can never ask, oh, you got this medical note that says you need these accommodations. What is your disease exactly? They can't ask you that question.
Thank you, John, for that. Folks, we're almost at the end, so we have 8 minutes. I'm going to probably take the next 2 or 3 questions, John. One of our clients, a recent immigrant, lost their entire savings to a scam. It sounded very legitimate. They even provided a phone number. The client called it, and it sounded like a proper government office. They lost almost $8,000, which is their entire savings. Is there any legal recourse that they can look into for this situation?
So because I don't practice in that area of law, I don't know, but definitely make a police report at the very least. I know with some, depending on how the scam was made, for example, if it was through a credit card, I know sometimes credit card or even the banks will provide the person with some refund, if not a refund, but some compensation for that. Some legal clinics do some consumer law issues, and sometimes they kind of broach scam issues as well. It is possible a legal aid clinic, in your home legal aid clinic, may be able to provide assistance, but yeah, I don't think I have any specific answer to this one though.
Completely understood. Next question. I have a refugee claimant on social assistance with 4 children, but the money is not enough for a family of 6. What can she do, or she and her husband cannot get employment due to COVID?
Yeah, that's the big gap. The big gap is the CERB isn't meant for people who having trouble finding work due to COVID, but people who lost their job due to COVID. So I think other than social assistance that they're already on. Now, again, there is some municipalities is providing some discretionary, I think one-time benefits, as far as I can tell, benefits to people. So, it may be a long shot, but they may look into applying for those discretionary benefits through the municipality social services. But other than that, I don't think there is really much. I do know there is the government is giving some one-time benefits. I think for people with disability, I think there's one-time disability benefit that they're giving at this point. I think there's a couple of $100. I don't know the details on it. I'm not even sure if those have been distributed. There are some, what I might do I may maybe email you. There's a one-stop shop materials that one of our legal clinic colleagues created as to all the different benefits that's available to various different people. Maybe I'll send it to you by email. And then
Very good, and we'll distribute it out to the participants. And for participants who have been asking about the recording, we will try to get the audio out for you. I'm still trying to track down the last recording and to figure out whether or not it was sent out, and you probably just missed it. Again, a question around health and childcare and inability to return to the office, and whether or not the employer can fire someone who is refusing to return to the office because of health concerns and or childcare.
So first of all, the mere fact that as long as you refuse to work in a proper way, you can't be penalized for that. So again, the proper way is you tell your employer why you're refusing to work. That triggers the employer's duty to investigate your complaint. And if you still disagree with your employer's findings that it's safe to return to work, then you still have an option to file a complaint to the Ministry of Labor, who will send an health and safety inspector. Once the health and safety inspector tells you it's safe to return to work, at that point in time, practically speaking, you do have to return to work, practically speaking. Now, I'm speaking about people in average health without any underlying disabilities or things like that. Now, if you do have a disability, however, or you have childcare issues and you just can't find an alternative for childcare, then the Human Rights Code kicks in, and you may have protections, additional protections, because you have a disability or because you have childcare issues. Now, again, it's a bit complicated. You know, they will ask, well, it can't be your preference to stay at home with a child. You just, more or less, I'm simplifying things a bit, you more or less have no choice but to stay at home because there's no one else to take care of the child kind of situation. If it's those situations, the employer can't fire you. So what I would encourage people to do is, hey, if you get fired because you said, I have childcare issues and I have to work from home, or if I can't work, or if I have a disability, I wouldn't be too surprised if the employer didn't completely fulfill their human rights obligations. So while I can't guarantee, obviously, because every case is different, there may be enough there for the fired worker to at least seek some kind of legal advice to see if there's remedies available. So I would definitely encourage the person to do so.
Thank you, John. For folks whose questions didn't get answered, we are sorry. We know that there are lots of questions. We will certainly try to host another one of these webinars with our friends in the legal community. Thank you once again to John No for joining us. Before we let you go in the last 3 minutes that we have, John, thank you for offering to send us that one pager that has all of the information about the available supports that governments at all levels have put out. We will try and get that out to the participants on here. Before we leave, folks, we have one more poll for you. Amy, over to you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Excuse me, cat fur.
The poll is launched. Please complete your choices.
John, I'm wondering if you can just answer while people are doing the poll. And this question is, can my employer lay me off if there is no work to do because of COVID? And do they have to pay me while I'm laid off?
There's no requirement for them to pay you, but if your layoff extends past September 4th, then it's deemed to be a termination. And that triggers employer's obligation to pay you termination pay, severance pay, or what we call pay in lieu of notice. What you're entitled to depends on how long you work there, what age you are, what kind of work you did. So if you still haven't found a job by September 4th, there's probably you will be entitled to some kind of financial compensation. In theory, you could also try to seek financial compensation even before September 4th, but that will probably require you to hire a lawyer. It's a little bit more complicated to try to do so before September 4th. But but there is no legal requirement for the employer to pay you during the temporary layoff. It's just that if they don't recall you back within a certain amount of time, then they have to pay you termination pay and or severance pay, or what we call common law pay in lieu of notice.
Thank you. And for Amy has launched the second question. For those who are asking around for sponsored refugees, whether privately sponsored refugees, please go through your chat. There is some good information that your colleagues are providing. One is a reminder that a good reference around this is the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program website, RSTP, that has information about the responsibilities of private sponsors to their sponsored families and individuals. Thank you once again, John. Amy? Amy, do you want to share the results of question number 5 while we wait for question number 6 to be answered?
Yes, so I've shared the results. I'm not sure if you can see the poll results on the
No.
screen. Okay, so let me read it out. The question is, do you receive Debbie Douglas sector information updates? 64% voted before I close the poll, and 29% of you answered yes, 64% said no, and 7% said rarely. So one of the ways you can receive information directly is if you're a frontline worker, please sign up for the frontline worker email list. I dropped that information in the chat. Basically, just send an email to policyevents@ocasi.org. And Debbie, that's it for the polls.
Great, thank you all for participating. We also wanted to see, and I'm not sure how we're going to get that from you, but we wanted to be able to use those of you who signed up for this webinar to just subscribe you to the OCASI newsletter. What we're finding is that the newsletters are going to senior managers in your office and it's not being distributed down through the organization. So it's not surprised that only 29% of you are seeing our newsletters. It has lots of information, not only my monthly blog, but also information of what's happening in the sector. The frontline workers only e-list is an opportunity for you to speak to each other without managers and to speak to OCASI staff. I'm also not on that list as an executive director, so it is absolutely a safe space for you. Once again, thank you, John No from Parkdale Legal Clinic. Thank you to the 171 of my colleagues who joined at the peak of the webinar and the 165 of you who stayed until the end. Listen out for our next information session about COVID-19 and how it is that you're coping and the questions that you have. Have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. John, I love your office. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, OCASI staff. Thank you, OCASI frontline practitioners. And I can never figure out how to get out of here.